everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of DEI After 5. So, again, we're doing another replay this week because I think that it's so important for us to really focus on what it means to be human in this leadership role. And so, this week's episode, we're going back to the time where I spoke to Gemma Toner when we talked about empathy, curiosity, and inclusion and how it all works together to create leadership that is more impactful and more meaningful to the people on your team. So sit back, relax, and I hope that you enjoy this episode.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of DEI After 5. I am really excited to have this conversation because I think it's one that we really need to slow down and really think about, especially as a lot of DEI efforts are being rolled back or pulled away, or people are losing their jobs that are in this space. And so I want to talk about the importance of building and creating safe spaces, building community, and why it is so important, especially in times like this. And so today, my guest is Gemma Toner, who is the CEO and founder of the Tone Networks. So Gemma, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited about this conversation.
I am too. So for folks that may not know who you are or about the Tone Networks, can you give us a little bit of background?
Sure. I founded a company that is focused on a community learning platform that's designed by women for tomorrow's leaders so that we can all thrive in an increasingly diverse workforce. And the way we do that, the best way I can describe that is think of us as your TikTok for your personal and professional development. It's really easy. It's really fun. It is not a typical learning experience. So it's more like video and playlists as opposed to PowerPoints and kind of bad actors in videos. So our goal is to make it really engaging and fun to learn. And also, just like how you started at the top of the show, which is to create safe places for people to learn and engage with experts that can help them better understand how to navigate their careers.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's interesting because, I was on the Tone Networks not too long ago, and I was blown away by exactly what you just described, right? It's not your typical lunch and learn or training. It really was a community, and folks felt comfortable or even had the opportunity to ask questions anonymously, right? And so there was no pressure. All of that was kind of taken away. And so it made me really think about what I'm hearing right now as I'm going out and talking to organizations that, their DEI efforts are being pulled away. Some organizations are even thinking of dismantling their ERGs or employee resource groups. So I think that, these virtual communities, virtual safe spaces are important. And so can you talk to me about why you founded, this organization in this way?
Yeah, I founded it because I had the good fortune of having a lot of people help me along the way. And that meant that throughout my career, I had access to mentors and sponsors and even an executive coach. And what I realized was that that's a scarce resource and that I wanted to find a way to make that knowledge available to everyone. And the way I knew how to do that was using technology. So that's the software platform we've built. And then having come from a content background, really getting to the heart of what you need to know, as opposed to have people kind of pontificate to you, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. So what I like to think of at Tone is that you can't Google what we talk about on Tone, right? Because it's authentic. It's coming from real people that are real experts that really get it. They get life and they get what it's like to be in a workplace where sometimes they're uncomfortable. They also get what it's like to be in a fabulous workplace so they can help you understand. And so I wanted that to not be something that is reserved just for those high performers that have been picked, if you will. I wanted to find a place or create a place where everyone can have access and engage, and to really start to at least level the playing field from access to knowledge.
I love that, because when we talk about equity, that's what that is, right? Making sure that everyone has access to the information in a way that is meaningful for them, right? And the other thing that I appreciate about how you all are set up is, I may not need these three things, but I need those three things, right? And so I can kind of pick and choose, what I want to do a deep dive in. I want to go back to something I said earlier, because there are probably folks that are listening or watching right now that are like, oh, Sacha said safe space, because I'm typically not a fan of that phrase. But I what I liked about the experience that I had on Tone was it wasn't that you all said this is a safe space, right? It was what people actually experienced. And the fact that they can ask questions. If they wanted to put their name up there, they could. If they wanted to be anonymous, they could, right? They had options. They could just listen if they wanted to. They could engage if they wanted to. And so it was about choice. And to me, folks know, I'm typically saying it. I can't promise you a safe space, but what I can do is promise that I will do my best to ensure that I won't harm you. And I felt that in that environment. And so, can you talk to me a little bit about why that is so important?
It's so important because, when we were developing the concept of tone, we actually did a lot of research, and we reached out to all different types of people in the workplace. And there was so much information that came back, which was, what my company offers doesn't work for me. It's not in, I don't have time to go take that course. And so that was part of what we learned. But what we also learned was that a lot of people feel uncomfortable in certain forums, and particularly women who typically don't raise their hand when they're in large venues. And so what we wanted to do was make this a place where you could raise your hand if you wanted to. You could simply learn from the other people that were raising their hand, right? And just, sort of hang out and let it wash over you. Or if you wanted to, you could also be anonymous. And a lot of that also came from the Tone team's personal experiences, right? Where, you've been at a conference and you've wanted to ask that question in a large forum, but you kind of chickened out. Well, that's real and that's honest, right? And then you were really grateful that the person next to you had the courage to ask that question. And so that's why at Tone, there's no room for shame. There's no room to force people into, what are your questions? What do you want to know? It's really about come as you are, participate as you like. And also that varies by topics. There are some very sensitive topics that we take on that often our clients, the companies we work with, don't actually address them. And we take those topics on. There's super sensitive, and I can assure you, everybody shows up in shoe cognito. And, even the idea of shoe cognito is one that has empathy in it, right? Because the idea is to step into someone else's shoes. Because some days you just don't feel like walking in your own. It's like, this has been really hard. I want to be in somebody else's shoes today, and I want to ask questions in someone else's shoes so that, I have the comfort to ask a question that is really difficult for me to articulate in a group setting. And so that's why it's so important. It's really because we all come to our work with different perspectives and different experiences. And our goal at Tone is to be respectful. And, we talked about respect and integrity, and, that being so important in the workplace, and how that's kind of we need to get back to basics when it comes to being respectful. And I'm very proud that our Tone environment is one of respect and that people feel comfortable in, and I think that is a function of everything we do, from the way we communicate to our members, to the way those Tone talks are conducted, to the way we make sure the questions are on point. It's all about being respectful. And as we continue to grow and evolve, it's also about expanding our view, because our workplaces are going to get more diverse, and there's going to be more demands on each of us to understand what it's like to walk in someone else's shoes and to do our best. We can never truly walk in someone's shoes, but we can certainly do our best to have that empathy and also have that grace to give someone an opportunity or the benefit of the doubt.
You know, Gemma, as you're talking, one of the things that is in the forefront of my mind, it's kind of splitting, right? I'm a visual thinker. So it's kind of splitting because, you know, I am 110% around, you know, this need for community and these spaces where people feel comfortable and they can be their authentic selves and they can show up in the ways that are meaningful to them, right? And not necessarily meaningful to anybody else in the space, but they can show up for themselves. So I'm seeing that. And then I'm seeing this counterbalance that's happening right now where some of these spaces are being taken away, right? Where there is a thought process that these spaces are exclusive. And because they are exclusive, therefore they should not be around because I'm not included in there, right? There's a lot of meism that's happening right now. So talk to me about, you know, how do we continue to move forward in creating these spaces when this very loud contingent of folks are positioning this, because I really think it's all messaging, right? Are positioning this to be exclusionary, right? If they were to say Tone Networks is just about women, and, you know, or this group over here is just about the LGBTQ plus population, you know, how do we get past this jealousy? I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I think it's a moment in time, right? And I certainly hope it's a moment in time, right? And I think the way we choose to get through this, because there is certainly a pendulum that I believe will kind of come to the center at some point. Right now, we're kind of on an extreme. That it's about all are invited. You know, tone has never been, and I think even ERGs, quite frankly, have never been exclusionary, right? You're invited to join. If you're interested in understanding what it's like to be a caregiver or a parent, or if you're interested in, you know, understanding what some of the challenges are that the women on your team or the LGBT community experience, whatever it is, right? If you're interested in being, you know, what is it like to be a young professional, all are welcome. And I think by just sort of taking the kind of the air out of that sail, right, which is come join us. We'd love to have you. You know, you're welcome to join. I think that's a way. I also think as we evolve with diversity, equity, and inclusion, I'm not afraid to say you can't have inclusion without diversity. So let's just state that, you know, that we do need to expand our view of how we look at all the different, and we call it at Tone, diversity lenses, right? We all bring multiple diversity lenses to our workplace and in our lives, right? For me, you know, I'm a mom, I'm an immigrant, first in my family to, you know, graduate college. I'm an entrepreneur, all these different levels of who we are that, quite frankly, you know, when you look at someone, you know, that's not what you see, right? And so we need to train ourselves to be more curious and to be more open to realizing that what you see is actually not what you get, right? I think that's really important. And as we develop content, it's really to address not only what it's like to experience a microaggression as a person of color, but what is it like to experience a microaggression when you're in the LGBT community, and then combine that, right? What's it like to give feedback as a manager? What's it like to receive feedback as a single, you know, individual contributor? So I think it's really pushing those lenses when it comes to the conversations and the learning that we continue to develop, because we all have them. No one is
Yeah.
just, there. We are multidimensional, and
Yeah.
let's embrace that multidimensional ness, if you will, of who we are, and stop putting these labels, right? Because it really, we all are many, many, many versions of ourselves.
It's interesting because one of the things that I am really grappling, well, I challenge myself with is stepping out of my lenses sometimes because I have so many lenses, right? I too am an immigrant, as a Black woman in this country, all of these lenses. And I try to step out of that and look at things like, okay, what could this person be seeing or experiencing that I don't necessarily see or experience, or I experience in a different way, right? And have that conversation. And so what's interesting when you said, invite people in, like all are welcome, everyone is welcome. I think the nuance with that is all are welcome, but this is who we're centering on. Like, this is what this group is for and about. And that's part of that lens of like removing that lens in order to see that this is the experience of this particular group.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's invited to come see that.
Right.
Or be tangential to it, because you might not be able to experience it, but at least be able to have some understanding. And I think that that's a huge part of this. It's everyone is welcome. Like, DEI is not an exclusionary thing by any stretch of the imagination. It's how this work is set up. For many groups, you have to center some groups in order to move forward because of the disparities, but because of the experiences, right? So I think about first time people leaders, right? I'm working on a project now. They have very different needs than someone that's more senior. And so I
Exactly.
can't give them all the same thing and expect them to be successful,
Right.
right? And so it's the exact same mindset. The other thing that you said that I was just like, oh, that's it. So many people have not taken the steps to understand their own identity.
Yes.
And so when they see other people identifying themselves in these ways, there's almost this visceral reaction because they've never looked at their own identities.
Right.
And I do this exercise. I've done this exercise before where it's the identity iceberg.
Mm-hmm.
And I ask people, I'm like, pick 5 things on here above the water, above the surface or below the surface. That are 5 most important aspects of who you are. And can I tell you that there's some folks that have never, ever had that, like they didn't even think about, they're like, I'm just a person. I'm like, but you're a dad or you're a mom or you're a son or daughter, all of those are part of your identity and shape how you show up.
Exactly. And it's that reflection, which so often none of us have time. It's, or haven't been asked, again, we're all so busy, right? And then it's also, as you explore, it's also to have that empathy, matched with curiosity, right?
Yeah.
So curiosity about yourself, but also curiosity about your peers and your colleagues and everyone that sort of is in your orbit, if you will. And last but not least, in all of this, empathy is really important here.
Yes.
And it is something that we can learn. And it really is something that, to me, it's about giving people grace, understanding sometimes a bad behavior is a bad day and it's not a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
And, really understanding that. But also, when we get back to tone and kind of the environment we create, we have pretty clear guidelines, we have guardrails. And, there will not, there are things that are not acceptable in the tone community, and I'm okay with that. We do need rules and, you need rules of engagement, right? And I think that's really important because it also keeps it respectful and it also helps with guardrails that if someone is not being respectful, well, then this may not be the right place for you, right? And I do think that's really important in a world, and especially in a world today where there's so much out there in media that can be so divisive. It's important that, we come back to, this is a respectful environment. If you're here to learn, you're here to embrace what we're doing. We want you to ask questions. We want you to succeed, right? I think that's very important. I think that's important for organizations. And, I'm sorry to hear that, some ERGs are being disbanded. I do think it's really important to have those groups to be safe spaces, but also, ERGs have a business purpose, and that's really important to remember. It's, if you're developing products, you want to get the different points of view from the different types of communities you have within your company. So that's very important. And, at Tone, what we try to do is help companies build stronger internal communities. Because at the end of the day, some of us are so busy. I've been there, right? Where you don't even know that there's a fabulous person that could be a great mentor to you just down the hall because you're so busy just getting it done, right?
Yeah.
And so part of, I think, what ERGs bring to the table is this social construct that really helps people identify like-minded people that may be able to help them in some way, shape, or form, or that they may be able to help. So it's very important from a peer-to-peer mentoring perspective, but also from a product development perspective, So it's just super important. And again, part of the Tone community is that, we're focused on learning. We're focused on making it easy. We're focused on making sure you are getting information that you can't simply Google.
Right.
And also giving you access to people like you that, people don't have access to you otherwise. And it's also giving our members access to different points of view. And sometimes you may come to Tone and watch a video or come to a Tone Talk and you may not agree with that. And that's okay. That's what it's supposed to be. But what we know at Tone and our commitment to our members is that this is a verified expert with a body of work that makes them truly an expert, not just social media feeds, if you will, right? Advanced degrees and published and all those things that make experts true experts. And that they also share part of our mission, which is to help others. Right? I mean, that is part of our DNA. And I guess part of that is what you feel when you come to Tone. You feel like it's a helpful environment. And I like to say you can, because there's plenty of shame out there and there's plenty of people to tell you can't. That's not what we're about. You come to Tone to realize, I can. And I think the other piece about community for Tone is that it also, you realize that, wow, I'm not alone. Right? Like, gosh, look at all these other people that are here experiencing the same thing. And so then all of a sudden you don't feel so strange and odd, right? So it's not me, right? There's something bigger here that's the challenge. And what I would say is, what we try to do, and we talked about this, about being respectful of people's time. And part of developing Tone, we made sure that we asked you what you're interested in. So that if you're not a parent, we're not going to send you content that is progressive parenting, because that's not respectful to you. Your time is very, very valuable, and we want to make sure that you get what you need when you need it.
So, I'm hearing a couple of things, Gemma, that I think are so important. I'm gonna work my way backwards.
Sure.
I think the last thing that you said, and the marketer in me was just like, yes, right? Like, know your audience, right? You have to know your audience and give them information that is going to make them move, right? And so be it listen, be it purchase, whatever it is, you want them to act off of whatever they're experiencing. And so I think that is so important in building community, because again, not every community needs the same thing or finds the same things important. And so you really need to customize your messaging. The other thing that you talked about was, having this opportunity to kind of listen. But part of that is stepping outside of your comfort zone a bit too, in order to not be in this echo chamber, right? And I think that's a lot of what has happened in the last few years, right? When you hear this cancel culture, people want to be in an echo chamber. They don't want to hear anything that's opposing or challenging their thoughts or their beliefs. And so when you do that, when you step outside of that comfort zone and you allow yourself the opportunity to at least listen, not to necessarily agree, but at least to understand where the other person is coming from, it allows for a richer dialogue, right? And you can then now start to have a better conversation. And that goes back to the humanity, right? That goes back to understand the empathy. That goes back to just treating people like human beings. Like, let's get back to that.
to treat each other, like we'd all like to be treated, right?
Right.
And I do think that, it's really important that we are, again, I keep coming back to these terms, respectful.
Mhm.
And the other term, I just think, who doesn't want to be curious? So when you talk about stepping outside of your comfort zone, yes, at Tone, you can do it through Shoecognito, so nobody knows, right? So that
Right.
makes it a little easier to step outside. And if you're still a little uncomfortable doing that, think about, curiosity. I mean, that is a key to success. You must be curious. And so you may not need, just like what you said, you may not agree with it, but at least be curious and want to understand it so that you can see the other side, if you will, right? And I think that, back to your point, a lot of that has been lost. And so what's also important is that, at Tone, you had said this earlier, you have a lot of choices, right? You can
Mhm.
learn one-on-one by looking at the micro-learning videos we have that are served to you based on your interests. But then we have these collaborative learning experiences, right? Where it's respectful. And that's really important. And it's important, again, to connect with others. Even if you're not talking to that person right then and there, it's that sense of, I'm not alone, and I'm learning from other people, right? Because I truly believe in my heart of hearts that everyone has something to contribute to kind of the greater sphere of learning. We all have experiences that can help each other. And I find during those Tone Talks, like the one you were on, you find a question that, or someone might type in something that they've found effective in the chat. And you're like, gosh, that's a great idea, and
Mhm.
ordinarily you wouldn't have had that, if you sort of didn't take a moment to invest in yourself. And I think that's the other piece here that
Yes.
that's kind of the elephant in the room, right? Which is, hey, I am often last on my list.
Yes.
And part of why we created Tone the way we did was to, I like to call it, sneak into your heart strategy, right? Which is, we want to make it so easy for you to invest in yourself that you kind of can't say no. It's like, I know it's hard to do an hour workout or go out for a run, but you have a couple minutes, don't you? You have just a few minutes to invest in yourself and put yourself first. And that's kind of where Tone started. It's just, give me a few minutes and we're going to help you. We're going to help you move forward. We're going to help you get unstuck. We're going to help you enjoy and get the life you want. Because again, when we started Tone, which I did not name, I have to give a girlfriend of mine the credit for that. But she literally said, Gemma, it's called Tone Network. Set the tone of your life. And that's the goal here.
Mhm.
And when we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, well, guess what? The world is becoming more diverse. And, the other side to all of this with, this blowback that we are experiencing with diversity, equity, inclusion, I think it's very short-sighted because at the end of the day, we are going to have a shortage of qualified employees. And that's very shortly. It's like by 2030,
Yeah.
that's around the corner. And when you think about pulling back on something that is so important to retention, right? To making, what are the best environments? The best environments are environments that are inclusive.
Yeah.
We talk about everyone wants to build an inclusive culture at their organization. Well, guess what? You got to start with recognizing what inclusion means. That means
Yes.
everyone has
Absolutely.
table. And that doesn't mean, throw out the baby with the bathwater, right?
Right.
And I understand things need to be measured. And certainly Tone is a measurable experience. We can share with our clients the level of engagement so that they can see that, yes, people are using this and progressing. That's important. We need to be able to have those metrics. But at the end of the day, you can't have inclusion without diversity, and there's some basic stuff that needs to happen in organizations to start.
Yeah. And, we can go on for days about this because I just think that, I agree with you. It's very short-sighted, and especially when you have this generation that's coming up very fast in the organizations, right? Gen Z, their expectations is diversity is there, right? And they are not staying at organizations that are dismantling this. And so what I find so fascinating that what's happening on college campuses right now in this turning away, I have students contacting me all the time to learn about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So they're going to get the information regardless because they know that the workplace is going to require this of them. So, it's absolutely short-sighted.
And I will also say, the other side to it, yes, there are companies that are pulling back, but then there are also a lot of companies out there that are full steam ahead. And does that mean that they might be doing it a little differently? Sure, it does. But that's okay. It's what's most important is that, some of the companies we work with, it's like diversity, equity, inclusion is in our DNA. It is who we are. We have been working on this not just for a year. We've been working on this for many, many years, and we continue to evolve. And so, there is some kudos there for those companies that continue to see that this is the way to get to a better bottom line.
Yeah. So, Gemma, I'm going to do a little bit of a pivot.
Sure.
How do you fill your cup? Like, what are the things you do to take care of yourself?
Me, yes. Well, of course, like the really big stuff is to get to go on a vacation, right? But I would say on a daily basis, there's, I really have found that, and I know a lot of people do this, but I really do it before I get out of bed. I just do my list of gratitude, and that really helps me ground myself for the day. Also, another small thing, because sometimes filling your cup is small, and it's just having a cup of tea and just staring into it. Believe it or not, I had one of our experts say, this is a form of meditation. And since I was convinced at the time that I couldn't meditate, I didn't imagine that I could, but literally just doing simple things like that. And then, of course, I love, from a self-care perspective to get out, but it's not always that easy to get out and take a dance class or a bar class. That's always fun for me. And I would say the other really big thing is helping other people. And that can be in the simplest of ways, whether, you're coming up, I'm here in New York in Penn Station, and that's helping a lady with her baby carriage up the steps. Those little acts make my day, and they are truly a gift. So I would say those are the things that I do to fill my cup.
Love it. So if someone wanted to get in contact with you or learn more about Tone Networks, how could they do that?
Well, first of all, my email address, gemma@tonenetworks.com. Please come on over, send me whatever you'd like to send. I'd love to hear from you. And then to actually visit tonenetworks.com. We have a contact area there. We'd love to hear from you. And, it's as easy as that. Follow me on LinkedIn. I do respond, as well as follow Tone Networks on Instagram.
Wonderful. Gemma, thank you so much for joining me today. Like I said, I was looking forward to this conversation because I think this whole need for community, investing in community is so important, especially now. And so, having the experience of working with you and the team with Tone Networks, I just thought, okay, yes, we need to continue this conversation because these are the things that are helping to move the needle forward, even when we feel that we're facing headwinds. So
yes, and we do have some headwinds. And again, I look forward to both of us supporting each other, and I know we will.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for tuning in to this week's episode of DEI After 5. I hope you were able to walk away inspired and with a few nuggets of things that you could possibly do for yourself or for someone else, or even within your organization. You could tune in here every Tuesday at 5:15 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. Please, please, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe tell others about this. We're really excited to continue these conversations. And until next time, have a good one. DEI After 5 is produced by the Leon Thomas Group. For more information, go to theleonthomasgroup.com.